Morning.
Morning. Are we the only two on? Oh, there's one more.
Yeah.
What did I scare people away with goals? Come on.
Hope not.
I hope not too.
Opposite.
Right? Oh, I just realized I don't have my water. Okay, walking to get my water. Where did I put it? Oh, there we go. It still looks like I'm in a cave.
I was gonna ask, how did your skylight thing go? It's not done yet?
They're still blocked.
Oh.
They took them out and then ordered them, I think. So it's going to be a while. But I'm just glad ours didn't leak too much. The unit 2 doors down, I don't know what they did with how they covered their skylights, but it like flooded to the floor below. Thankfully, it's just the entryway and it's not somebody else's unit, but
Still not great.
glad that wasn't us. Yeah. Yeah. Craziness. So yeah, the only place I have light is like in my bedroom, which is a weird place to do a launch from. So here we are. I'm so excited. Hey, how's it going?
It's going good. Lots been happening. So
yeah,
I just joined the JSG team. So I've been lots of meetings, lots of shadowing, lots of things.
Yeah, that is a lot. Well, congrats. That's exciting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I do owe you an accountability call. I've been in that stage where signing docs and reviewing what goals are given to me, and so I'm really in the initial organizational stage. So I don't know what your expectations are from me for my accountability call. So, we can talk about that later. I don't need to take other people's time up with that, but
well, we're waiting. I'll wait a couple minutes for people to join us. So with the accountability call, the way I've been doing it is you send me a text with, hey, I want to do an accountability call. I give you some dates and times that might work. I'll send you a Google Calendar invite, and then you call me at that time. The reason I do that is just because that way it's like if you had an appointment with a client, it would be treated the same way. And then we talk for 15 to 20 minutes. And the format is, tell me something good about your business right now. Where are you with your top 5? And we kind of build that each call. So, hey, last time you said you were going to work on X. How's that going? And then we set okay, by the next call, I'm going to do this. And that's essentially it. So it's just an opportunity to have a due date to, complete something or get the next step in something done, and then to have a follow-up due date. And then I jump in and offer advice on things if you're like, I'm trying this, but I'm stuck, or, I've been working on this thing, but I don't know if I'm spending too much time on it, or if if I'm on the right track, especially with things like your buyer consultation, your listing presentation. Those are, not as straightforward as going over an offer or something like that. So just saying like, here's what I have so far. What am I missing? Or this is kind of, I want to run this by you. So yeah, that's kind of the basics of it. So it's just a good chance to check in. And really it's, for the way I use accountability is like, I just need to have a due date and somebody I'm going to disappoint if I don't finish this, so that I get stuff done. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have times open, so feel free to send over a text and we can do that.
Okay.
Yeah. I see Anna's on. Jessica. Hi.
Hello.
Welcome. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. We'll go give people like one more minute, and then I'm going to jump in so we don't run out of time. I'm trying not to run over. I get so excited, and then the time goes past, and I'm like, it's like 15 minutes always seems to be the stretch. So if you don't have them with you, make sure you've got something that you can take notes with, whether that's on your computer or paper. And some either brainstorm list or something more put together as far as what you want your goals to be for the next quarter. So if you don't have that yet, you've got a couple of minutes to just like write a few things down. You really only should have like 2, maybe 3 maximum total. But if you kind of have a bunch of ideas and you want to just pull some out of there, that's okay too, just depending on where you are in the process. And I'm going to use like a goal detail outline that I used for this coming quarter. That's semi-new to me. It's a little bit different than what I've used before, and is not the only way to do it, but I want to show you how I'm using it and why I think it's helpful. And then you can do what you will. You can use it, you can take parts of it, but hopefully it's at least a way for you to get those things on paper and have them available to you. One of the most effective things is to write down your goals and to look at them. I know that sounds really basic, but just having them in front of you as a reminder, something to go back to on a regular basis, especially when you're newer and it feels overwhelming and there's 1,000 things to do, but also once business starts going and you've got 1,000 things to do, it's really good to have that to come back to and remember what am I really doing here? What am I trying to accomplish this quarter? You know, are these activities that I'm doing getting me closer to that goal? And if not, do I need to change the goal, or do I need to recommit to the goal? Like what's the issue here? So it's just good to have those as a reminder to go back to. I'm gonna try to turn on one more light because I really do look like I'm in a cave here. I don't know if that helps, maybe. A little. All right, cool. Well, we'll get started. I see a few more people jumping on. Jackie, Dewana, thanks for coming. So how many of you have some goals written down for next quarter, whether it's a precise list or just a brainstorm or something? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So I recently went through my goals for this quarter, second quarter, to kind of do a review, see what was working, what wasn't, what I should double down on, what I should stop doing. And I'm using that reflection time to help me determine what my goals are for next quarter. So I had a number of goals that I set at the beginning of the year for the full year. And usually that is 7 to 10 goals total for the year, but I break them down by quarter. So there are 2 to 3 per quarter, kind of typically. And I try to have at least one of those goals either entirely or partially be connected to my life outside of work, whether that's personal care or, you know, family relationships, health, whatever it is. I try to make sure that my goals aren't all business, even though it's really easy for me to do that. So even what I have this coming quarter, I've got some goals that kind of affect both business and personal life. So 2 to 3 goals for the quarter, at least one of them having at least a partial connection to your life outside of work. And at least one of them should be work related. And there are all different parts of your life, right? There, if you've looked at The One Thing or The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, those books have a chart that show the different parts of your life. So it's not just business, it's your relationships, it's your health and wellness, it's your spirituality. There are all different parts of life, and your goals can come from one or multiples of those things. And that's okay. They don't have to be specifically work only or specifically health only. They shouldn't be so regimented that they're not realistic for real life. And when you put those together, there's a newer format I'm using to kind of break it down and make it very connected to my why, to have real reasoning behind it and to have next steps. And that's what I'm going to show you today. You know, keeping in mind that, especially with everything going on with COVID and some things being uncertain, also just being new and not quite knowing what's coming next. 3 months from now, your business could be very different. So know that whatever you set, part of the reason it's so important to have that in front of you all the time, written down on paper, digitally, whatever it is, for you to check back on regularly, at least weekly, is because you may find that you need to make some changes. And like I said, whether it's recommitting to that goal because you've fallen off track, or adjusting it, scrapping it completely, kind of resetting your next steps, it's really good to come back to those. If you don't make a goal, how do you know where you're going, right? You should have a, this is where I want to be, and work backwards from there. If you don't know where you want to be and you just want to like see where the world takes you, there's a very good chance you're going to end up way short of where you could have been if you had started intentionally. And really being purposeful and intentional with your time and your energy and your tasks for the week is going to get you tremendously further than if you just said, well, I'm just going to do and see what happens. And it's not as hard or as regimented or as boring as it seems. And in fact, it's kind of fun because you can give yourselves, you know, rewards. You can celebrate your victories. It's a lot easier to measure victories and progress if you have something you're headed towards, right? Otherwise, like, I can make up anything that's like, well, I guess that was good. That was a cool thing. I don't know. Is that getting me anywhere? I have no idea. So if you just do these simple things to set up your goals, to break them down, and to visit them regularly, that alone will get you further faster. And ultimately, you want to sell 5 properties to graduate from the program, right? And the more structured you are about setting up those goals and checking back in on them, it doesn't mean your whole life has to be a block schedule if that doesn't work for you, but you have to have something to go back to. So I'm going to show you one of my goals to break it down, and then I'm going to have some of you share yours. Safe space, so no judgment. This is totally for learning purposes. And there are some pieces of this that I have found to be more challenging than I thought I would over the years. And this is after 6 years of setting goals for my business. I'm still trying to figure out the best way to write these and set them up and really make them achievable and break them down into doable tasks. That's the hardest part. It's the work on the front end. Once you set that up, then you've got something to go back to regularly. And I'm telling you, it'll get you through those weird times when you fall off course, when you don't have the energy, when you feel like you don't know what you should be doing, or you're overwhelmed by information. Just go back to those goals. That's what you should be doing to move ahead. Make sense? Cool. So I put a post in the Facebook group last week to help you build out your goals. And it was, what the word that it spelled out was smarter. So the goals that you put together should have some characteristics that make them very doable, that make them measurable. So the first thing, S, is specific. So it's really easy to say something like, you know, I want to sell some houses. I want to grow my business. That's not very specific. So saying how many units you want to sell, or how many happy clients you want to have, the volume of, you know, the prices total that you're selling, those are the things that are specific. So my goal detail for third quarter, and this is keep in mind, this is my goals based on, I'm in my almost 7th year in business. Do not make this your own goal unless you really want to work all the time, is 12 units and 3.5 million. So very specific. I will close 12 home sales for happy clients by the end of September, totaling at least 3.5 million in sales. So it's specific, it's measurable. The M is measurable. It is action oriented. So action oriented means you're using an action word or a verb. You're not saying this many sales by, it says I will close. There's a difference. And when you read that regularly, it gets into your psyche, right? I am closing 12 units in 3rd quarter. Not I have this many sales or this many sales will happen. It's something I'm doing. The R is risky, so it should be a little uncomfortable. Now, looking at what I have coming up, looking at what my sales were last quarter, I could push this. I originally had this set up for 19 units, and one of my other goals is to find better balance and take a day off, Amanda. So I lowered my number of units to accommodate another goal. So this is risky in terms of there's a piece of this where I'm working to increase my average sale price to actually, for fun, try to sell fewer units and have a higher volume total. So my piece of that that's risky is kind of a little additional bit. Time, so it has to have a deadline. Now, if you set a goal for the quarter, you don't have to make it for the full quarter. You could make it partial. If you're setting a habit goal, so something you're going to plan to do every week or every day, setting a habit takes about 66 days. And there are more than 66 days in a quarter. So you could, in theory, set a goal that ends or that your accomplishment date is sooner. And then you could build off of that. You could continue, you could, add on to that habit. You could start a little mini goal. So make sure you've got a deadline or a time frame when that has to be done, and also when you're going to do it. So if it is a habit goal, something like reviewing my goals every week, then I'm not just saying I'm going to review my goals every week. I'm going to review my goal on Friday at 3 p.m. every week. And I'm going to, make sure it's working, tweak it, double down, whatever I need to do, keep moving forward on that. So time is the T. The E is exciting. So it should be compelling. If it's something boring to you, if it's ho-hum, if it's something you don't really care about, then don't start with that. We've got our top 5, and I know that not everybody loves all 5 of those things, right? So pick one of them that you're most excited about and make that one of your goals. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the full quarter, but for part of the quarter or for the month, pick one you're excited about, because you're way more likely to do it if you're jazzed, right? Like, don't give yourself resistance right off the bat, especially when you're starting with goals. Like, do something that's you're excited about, that you're gonna feel good about when it's accomplished. And then the R is relevant. So make sure it's appropriate to where you are in your life right now. One way to say that is like whatever season you're in. So you are newer to the business, COVID is happening. You may have to be planning for kids homeschooling part-time in the fall, whatever it is, make sure that the goal is relevant to your situation. Don't worry about everybody else's. This is about you. So make sure that it's relevant. So I'm going to say those again: specific, measurable, action-oriented, risky, time sensitive, exciting, and relevant. So that's how I came up with these goals. Now, the way I broke this down, and this is an outline you can work off of, and I'll follow up with this in the Facebook group. It's very simple, so I didn't make a chart or anything for it. But when you break down your goals, here's how you're going to set them up. You want to have a summary where you write down your smarter goal. So when you write that down, it's going to have all those pieces to it. It's specific, it's measurable, it's risky, time sensitive, all those things will be built out. So for me, mine is we will close 12 home sales for happy clients by the end of September, totaling at least 3.5 million in sales. Now, as we go on in the quarter, I will probably tie a profit amount to that as well, because one of the things we're working on is watching our expenses versus income and ensuring that we have a profit that is measurable. So that'll be part of the growth of that goal too. Key motivations. This is really big. So you've got to find that why. If the why for why you do this business of real estate is so overwhelming to come up with, then come up with at least your key motivations for your goals. It'll kind of help you, point you in the direction of what your big why is. So for me, for my key motivations, for my achievement goal for my business is to help as many people as I can in a quality way, to have money to pay my assistant, to have money to donate to important causes I care about, especially right now, to save money for our dreams. So, you know, our next home, travel, investment, etc. Somebody's got their speaker on. Who is that? April. And then to have a means to expand my team. So for me, those are my key motivations. And you can rank those in order as well if you'd like, but you should have at least 3. So there should be key motivations pushing you towards your goal. So when you feel off track or you're having a hard day or you've had a setback, go back to those key motivations. Have them written down so that you remember, why is this goal important? So when you're feeling down in the dumps, like, I don't even care. I don't care if I sell any houses this quarter, this stinks. Then you can go back to your key motivations. Why am I really doing this? After that, it's your next steps. This is important. When you look at the One Thing book, you are looking at one thing you can do today, right? What's the one thing I can do that makes everything else easier or unnecessary? So breaking something down into small bits is really important to making progress. And those things can be tiny, depending on what season you're in your life, depending on what the goal is. These should be broken down to very simple things. So if I were to break this down really, really minimally, for me, I have a pipeline of people who I may work with this quarter or already am. And so I need to go back and organize that and make sure I know when everybody would like to close ideally, what everybody's maximum purchase price is, just a reminder of all of their parameters for their search. And very minimally, I just need to touch base with each of those people, however I do that. And the best thing that I've found is finding a property that might interest them and sending it to them. You can do that through MLS, and it can be set up so you can see when they open it if you do it as an email, or you could text it through the app. But just making that tiny little outreach is one really important step to get me towards those closings. So it can be very small. The other thing I have to make sure that I do is I set up the subscriptions or the automatic email updates for each of those people. And some of those need updating. They've said, oh, actually, we're going to add this location. I'm like, cool. And I'm in the middle of driving somewhere to an appointment, and I'm not going to stop and do that right then. So I need to get back to that. Other things that I know I need to do, reaching out to past clients. I have a list of who my follow-up people should be every week. So I'm going back and texting, social media connecting, calling, or emailing to just connect with them. Those people are a great source of referrals for me. So for you, that might not be past clients, but it could be sphere. People you know, people you've worked with, people who know and trust you. Making that part of my tasks will get me to that goal. And granted, building those relationships, making those connections, you might not see all of those come to fruition in this quarter, but this is a piece of a whole year goal for me. So I might see these come up as referrals in the fourth quarter, and that's okay too, because this is part of a larger goal. Another thing I have to do is following up on referrals. So thanking the people who have sent me referrals, however you want to do that. Some people have a standard, you know, they send a gift card. Some people just send a text or call. I like to send a note in the mail. But making sure I'm really showing appreciation for those referrals is huge. How many people get cards in the mail that often? Did you save the last card you got in the mail? Is it still on your refrigerator, your mantle, somewhere? Yeah, I've got some on my mantle from like February because they're so special. It's so nice to get a handwritten note. I highly recommend it. It's very effective. But however you want to do that, following up with the people who sent the referral and making sure that you've set an appointment with the person who's been referred to you, provided them the information they need, whatever it is. There are always going to be people who kind of fall to the back burner, and resetting for the new quarter is a really good time to revisit that, reconnect with those people. Make sure they're in your command, because that's going to get you towards your 100 contacts in there too. Another thing is to check in with all of my upcoming listings. So people have said, I'm thinking about it, or I'm probably going to sell in the fall or whatever. Getting those people on track, checking in with them. People say one thing and then life happens and their timelines change. And if they haven't heard from you in a while, they might go find somebody else. So make sure you're not just leaving them out in the cold on their own. And then I know at the very, very minimum, I have got to make appointments. When I feel lost, when I feel like I don't have the energy to really go through any major projects or anything, or small projects feel like major projects, the one thing I should be doing, the one thing, is making appointments. Whether that's a showing, a buyer agency consultation, you know, just a phone chat with somebody who's thinking about, you know, buying or selling, just to make an appointment. At the end of the day, my very minimal one thing to get me towards this goal is setting up an appointment. So after your next steps, and you can break that down into many and realize that, you know, week 1, I will do steps 1 and 2, or maybe just step 1. Week 2, you've got 12 weeks in a quarter. So you can stretch these things out, and some of these things you have to do every week. So it depends on the goal itself. Obviously, it's a habit goal, then it's something you're doing every week. But you might have to do some things in the first week or 2 to set yourself up in order to do that every week. You know, one of my other goals is a habit goal of having a workday startup routine and a workday end routine. And I need to revisit what those routines are and establish them. So the first week, I'm going to make my list of what those should be. The second week, I'm going to experiment with it. And then the third week, I'm actually going to start the habit. So when you break down those steps, it's going to be different for every goal. The last thing is your reward. I have a really hard time with this. I feel silly rewarding myself for doing work. And quite frankly, for me, accomplishing the goal is a reward. But you really should give yourself a reward. Make sure you're celebrating. You will burn out if you set these goals, you push yourself, you get to that point, and then it's like, on to the next. I promise you, you will burn out. So give yourself an opportunity to celebrate, to do something cool. It doesn't have to be huge. You know, if there's some small thing you've been wanting to like buy yourself something and make that your reward. For me, it's taking 2 days off, which sounds stupid because most people take 2 days off a week. I take 1 day off every 3 weeks, which is, don't do that. Do not do that. It's terrible. It's a bad idea. And I'm working on it, but I'm trying to figure out a way to kind of build that in so that I actually do it. So for me, it's 2 days off of work. So that's the build out of the goal detail. So you've got your summary, which is based on smarter goals. So being specific, being an action, measurable, an action, risky, time sensitive, exciting, and relevant. And then your key motivations, recognizing as well what part of your life this pertains to. Your next steps, and then your reward. And if this is a habit goal, you can put in there, or you can choose to track your streak. For some people, that's very effective. If you have a calendar or you have a chart and you can check off every day that you did that activity, if it's a daily or weekly activity. It sounds silly, but how many people love checking off their to-do list? How many people add things to their to-do list that weren't there just so they can check them off? Yeah, I totally do. And it's a small thing and it seems silly, but it's really effective. So use it. It's free, it's cheap, it's easy. Just make a little chart. Put it next to your desk, put it next to your bed, put it where you do your work, keep it on your phone, whatever helps you. But checking in on that goal every day, checking in on those habits, you know, at least once a week, making sure that you're making progress, that helps you build momentum. And at the end of the day, momentum is the key. Absolutely the key. So make sure that you are building up that momentum through your goals. Who would like to share a goal? We can kind of help you break down that goal for the quarter. You don't have to have it all set into this format just yet. Anybody? Elizabeth? Okay, go for it.
I have done all of the email subscriptions with all of my clients. No one's getting back with me, so I've decided to stop focusing on what I can try to push them to do, but I'm starting from scratch. I have a list of local businesses I'm going to start visiting. I want to join a new volunteer group, a new local club, something, so I can start a whole new career, because mine is not helpful.
So expanding your sphere.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So if we break that down to be a smarter goal,
right.
Do you already have it kind of written in that way?
A lot of it, yeah.
Okay. What do you have?
I have, okay, so 1 new group and 3 new businesses a week. So there's no Chamber of Commerce in West Dallas, which I found out. It retired in 2007. So there's this other one, but it's
What?
3, anyways. I know, this is just ridiculous. So I'm trying to figure out which area I wanted, specifically GeoFarm, and I wanted it to be my area where I live, but that's not gonna work because there's no opportunity here for that. So I'm not gonna beat that into the ground and drive myself insane like I have been. I crossed it off, and now I'm gonna venture out to other neighborhoods, other little cities, things like that. So Delafield Chamber of Commerce invited me to an event. I think I'm gonna join. I think I'm gonna do that stuff and then post about it. And then there's a bunch of local businesses around here that I haven't been to yet that have opened up recently. One you would probably really like because it's a tea shop. So I'm gonna go there today.
Oh yeah, Sway.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have it there doing that today. So, and then I'm gonna stop doing so much Facebook stuff because it doesn't get me anywhere because my sphere sucks. So I'm gonna do mostly Instagram and stay in contact with all these businesses and hope that if I continue that, instead of trying to work on the people that I already know and just expand it and then touch base with everyone, that will be the thing that will get me.
Okay. So a few things there. So it sounds like you've got some steps already built in, some tasks already built in. The overall goal, it sounds to me, is something related to expanding your sphere. You've got a little bit of like a farming angle in there. So I think simplifying that to just growing your contacts might be something more measurable. So if we're being specific, we can say expanding your contacts to, and we could say like how many contacts you wanted to add. Risky, so it should be a little more than you're comfortable with, and time sensitive. So that in part is the goal, like goal date. You could say maybe add, like you said, add 3 business contacts and 1, what was the other one?
Chamber of Commerce. So, and a volunteer group. So anything I can do in that realm.
Okay, so maybe connecting with or getting a contact person at 1, maybe it's 3 businesses a week, and that's a good starting point. It should be exciting, which it should be fun now that you can get into businesses a little bit more easily. and relevant. So the point is to find something that kind of builds into your life in and outside of work, right? Like you could be like going to pick up food or getting tea for a client and making those contacts. So that kind of ties into what you're doing. So the way you could break that down is to say that you want to add some, genuine or some true contacts. So not just asking somebody for their business card, but having a conversation, being recognizable one way or another, and also getting their contact info. 3 new contacts a week, and you could make your build out of tasks to be business specific. And you could give yourself the full quarter to see how that goes and then maybe revisit it on a weekly basis. But it sounds like this builds in perfectly to that context and command of your top 5, and will start to give you some momentum towards that farming goal. So one of the things that I find is really difficult, that I get really excited about, like doing a bunch of things, and I try to put more than one goal into one goal. And what happens is I can't break it down into manageable tasks that I can actually accomplish in the time frame. And so simplifying that to its very essence can be the most effective way to make that measurable, feel like you're getting some traction and making some, being able to check off some things on your list. And then you can revisit it and say, okay, how is this going? Am I doing 3 a week? Should I make it more? Should I make it 5? And then they can be businesses or people, and that can kind of filter into how I'm doing business and work outside, or life outside of business. But having that be simplified and measurable, you have some good tasks there. So reaching out to Chamber of Commerce, connecting with local businesses, doing that through Instagram, social media, and also in person. Those all sound like good steps that you can kind of put in an order or build off of each other. What are your key motivations for that goal to kind of expand your sphere?
Well, I feel like mine isn't there. People come to me and they're like, hey, I want you to help me find a home, help me do this, help me do that. And then all of a sudden I can go on all these showings and I can send them all this stuff, and we talk on the phone and we check in, and then they disappear no matter what I do, whether I'm reaching out just to tell some kind of funny inside joke that we experienced together, or if it's, hey, I saw this new listing, it's really cool, tell me what you think. It's making me crazy, and I need to stop being crazy, because I can't make people do things that they say they want to do, then they change their minds. And that's okay. Mm-hmm. That's fine. So I'm going to go from a completely different perspective and see what other people I can meet and help, because that's what we're doing.
Yeah. So it's a numbers game, right? So you've got, it's good to have a lot of eggs in your nest or your basket, right? Because some of them aren't going to hatch for 2 years. Some of them will never buy, but they'll send you their friend. Some of them will pop up out of nowhere and immediately want to write an offer. So the more eggs you have, the better. So expanding your sphere, it sounds like a key motivator for you is to have a better possibility that you'll have people that want to do something now.
Right. Or even eventually. I don't care when, just let me do something for somebody.
Cool. So like having that added potential for business is really important. Also, it sounds like the motivation to connect outside of your sphere to expand your reach could be another motivator. Also, just to go ahead.
Well, there was a productivity coaching, I think the first one I ever went to with Janine. She talked about the 100% of people, 95% of people want to talk about negative, backwards thinking things. And then there's 5% that want to support you and expand and help you and things like that. And you have to really look at your sphere and who you spend your time with to see if they're going to be a time suck or if they're going to help you with anything. And I feel like I've spent too much time in my life with 95%. I want to find those people that are driven and successful and helpful and be around them. So
Cool.
my family's not helping with that. Let's make a new one.
Yeah, and that 5% could even be its own goal. So identifying your 5%, pouring into that 5%, finding the people that are supporting you. So that motivator sounds to me like finding a source of energy and support to keep you going, to help you grow your business.
Yeah.
Cool. Those are some good ones. And I would just say that the trickiest thing with this, for me at least, is to not overcomplicate it. So, try to keep that as simple and straightforward as possible. Adding, if your goal is to add, 3 or 5 or whatever new contacts a week, you could build it out as a habit goal. You could say for the quarter, I want to have this many new contacts by the end of the quarter, and then build it out that way. And the 3 to 5 every week is one of your tasks. But yeah, I would say see it as, this is what I need to accomplish now. And then maybe the farming piece comes into play next quarter, and it'll start to naturally happen if you're focusing on certain areas, building those relationships, so that by fourth quarter, when you're working on your farming, there's some momentum there already. So for everyone, it's a good thing to keep in mind, whatever goal you build out for this quarter, don't feel like that means you're totally saying no to all these other things. You may be building up to that next quarter goal or that next year goal, just to get yourself some momentum. So don't be too concerned with it seeming too simple or too minor. There's so much to do with this business, and there's so many things that can pop up, that it should feel a little uncomfortable, but it should also be a goal that you can actually complete. And so don't make it too complicated, because otherwise you'll get stuff done, but it won't feel that way because you're not getting the entire goal done, because it has so many layers to it. So keeping it simplified so that it's something you can take action on, you can break down into tasks, and you can measure that you are accomplishing something is really important. Cool. Thanks for sharing. Anybody else want to share a goal that Beth?
I'll share. So I had set a couple or some of these goals up, when we were supposed to, and the opportunity presented itself for me to do it sooner than I kind of had thought. So a couple are checked off already.
Cool.
But I had been in a different career. So I was, dual career. And then being in this business, it's if you really don't make a full commitment, you're not going to get any traction. So I had to make a decision to leave a career I'd been doing for like 30 something years, which was very uncomfortable and scary.
Yeah.
So I checked that big one off. But I had planned on doing it sometime in July, and speaking to my boss, the conversation led there, and I decided just to let them know, and it was actually a good experience, and everything's great, and it made me commit. So it's exciting and very scary. So I that is about a month sooner than I intended to do it, but it's done. Check it off. My other goal was to check into maybe joining a team. I've been trying to do it solo, and part of doing dual career was I was getting stuck up in all that learning, going to this meeting and going to that meeting and doing that training and learning more and more and more about what I didn't know, that I was kind of getting paralyzed with all of that. And, kind of weighing out my strengths, my weaknesses, the pros and cons. And I think I'm a team person. I love being on a team. I like the atmosphere. I like working with people. So I think joining a team is probably in my best interest. So that's something I'm working on. And then now that I will be creating more opportunity for me to do this full time, since I'm leaving my other job full time, is I can start focusing on doing more consistent lead generation and follow up, which I wasn't doing because I was so busy working another job.
Yeah. So let's break that down. So when it comes to the leaving your job, we talked about that, you and I. And
Yeah.
did you feel like when that opportunity presented itself, you were more comfortable jumping on it because you had set that as a goal? Like it
Yeah,
was in
and
your mind?
I kind of like had it like set up in my mind that this is the commitment I was making. So that when the opportunity came up, even though it was sooner than I kind of planned, I kind of have been practicing how to say
Mhm.
it and what I wanted it to be like and what I meant, and psyched myself up to not chicken out.
Cool. So
Yeah,
that's a great example of just having that goal in mind and establishing it. Sometimes the hardest part is just saying, okay, this is a goal and it's going to happen. So that's awesome. The second goal that you have in terms of joining a team. So do you have, by this date, I'd like to be signed on with somebody, or have you broken down your time frame at this point?
I think by the end of the month.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
So this could maybe be a multiple layered goal
right.
for the quarter, or it might just end up being a month. So
Mhm.
if we go back to that smarter framework, specifically, so you want to be signed on with a team or working with a team with a contract, I would
Mm,
imagine would be the best scenario for you.
right,
um,
right.
by the end of June or by
Yeah.
mid-July, or I guess we're at the end
By
of June right now.
I know it's
End
like
of
it
July.
may happen sooner than that. I mean, by the end, but into July, at some point in July for sure.
Okay, so by the end of July, you
Yeah,
want to have a signed contract working with a team. Um, time frame, relevant, exciting. That kind of checks off all the boxes of the smarter framework. When it comes to key motivations, you kind of mentioned that, so you feel like you're more inclined to work with a team that could help you kind of streamline some of the learning
hmm,
processes, in terms of the pieces and parts of doing the job. So are you hoping to find a team that has a contract to close coordinator, or
oh,
somebody
definitely.
staff
Yeah.
wise that you could lean on? Okay,
Yes,
cool.
I've learned that leveraging is a great thing. Doesn't mean
Mhm.
you're not a good person or smart enough. It just means you're smart enough to realize other people can do things.
Exactly. Well, and when it comes to next steps, I think like making note of your strengths, your weaknesses, and having that in the back of your mind, as you're researching other teams, which would be another step. Then you have that for reference to say,
Right.
like, what am I really looking for? So that's great. It sounds like another motivator is, to feel like you've got some um, more structure to what you're
Yeah.
doing,
Yep.
which is great. And maybe also the benefit of the momentum of a team.
Right.
Yeah, so those are when there are times and you're like, oh man, I'm not finding the right team, or I thought I found the one I loved and they don't want me on their team. You can go back to those reasons,
Mhm.
to sort of reset and figure out what your next steps are. So doing some research on other teams is a good step. Identifying your strengths and weaknesses is a good step, and from that you could figure out, what are the things I'm looking for in a team. So,
Mhm.
the best interviews are when the person being interviewed has questions. So being able to say, this is what I'm looking for. Is this something you provide? Um,
Right.
I would also recommend um, getting a good grip on what the costs would be. So what your income would be without a team, what your income would be with a team, on like use one transaction as an example.
Mhm.
And that's been broken down. I'm trying to remember now who's doing the classes every other week out of Lake Country, but they're breaking down like the costs of um, a transaction and commissions and all of that. So I think looking at the money side of it is a smart thing to do. That can be a tremendous cost to be a part of a team, but it could be beneficial. It could be well worth the trade-off.
Right.
So that's another good step. Um, Reaching out and contacting people who are leading teams, or figuring out who your contact should be. Maybe interviewing people who are on those teams, or just people who are on teams in general, to get a better feel of how that how they operate.
Yep.
So this could all be good next steps. It's a big project, but I think it would be well worth the effort on the front end to find the best fit.
Right.
And then you have to have a reward too. Don't forget the reward.
Right.
Amanda, I have a question about teams.
Yeah.
I mean, is it something where like they kind of reach out to you and like ask you to join, or I mean, you just said like reaching out to them and, you know, interviewing them. That's kind of like real estate in general. When you pick a place you want to work at, you kind of interview them. And is it the same with like teams?
So the people who are leading teams or want to grow teams, especially in our office, are always watching. So they see who's making an effort, who's taking initiative, who has some momentum, who's making smart choices. So they're watching, but at least for me, it's one of those things where I might get some indication that someone's looking to join the team, and I may reach out to them and say like, what do you think of this? But I really think in general, it's best if you reach out and say, hey, I'm interested, or are you thinking about expanding your team? You know, with a big group like JSG, they have a system, and you talk to Janine and they have that all in place. With a smaller team, it's a much greater consideration. You know, if there's 3 people on a team and they're going to add a 4th, that's a big deal. Whereas Jay has so many agents and systems for things that's a different scenario. But I think identifying who that contact person is and just reaching out and saying like, are you thinking of adding people to your team? You know, I'd be interested in learning more about how you work. Something like that, I think, is always a good thing. And when you make that contact, I highly recommend calling and maybe following up with an email or some combination of communication, not to just like quickly, not that I think you would do this, but not to like text them and be like, hey, can I be on your team? You know, like doing it in a thoughtful way, I think is a good way to go about that. Okay. Yeah, but I do recommend, you know, do your research, understand their numbers, their production. You can find that out in MLS. Get a better feel for how they operate. You know, maybe if you can make a connection with somebody on the team and just see like how they operate, what they like and don't like about working on the, you know, being a part of the team. Hey, I'm thinking about joining a team. What do you think of your team? You know, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That it's like all that stuff leading up to it. Not every single one of those things is like exciting and fun, but it's well worth doing your homework in advance, because once you're on a team and then they're investing in training, they're taking the time to get you caught up to speed on how they do things. It doesn't look great if you join the team and then leave it, you know, in less than a year. So it's well worth, you know, taking the time to do that, because also if you do that, then anybody else whose team you join is going to be like, wow, is this worth bringing this person on? They're just going to leave us. So doing that work in advance, I think, is smart. Does anybody else have a goal they want to kind of break down?
I do. Because I'm putting myself in a position of holding open houses. I want to be comfortable with that buyer agency discussion. And so I need to make that happen. So I plan on training myself through videos or YouTube. Go over my meeting. Oh, how cute. So cute. Go over my meeting script with Janine. Observe one of the agents in action, actually going through the buyer agency agreement, and then practicing with family members or whoever team members that I can practice with.
Awesome. So the goal is that, are you aiming to do that within the quarter or the month, or how are you feeling for your time frame?
Because I don't like not knowing what I'm talking about, I would say more in the 45-day range.
Okay,
I want to be
cool.
up to speed and feel comfortable with that so that if the opportunity presents itself, I can go with it.
Awesome. So setting up your goals through that smarter framework. So you are, you want to have your buyer consultation presentation set up in a way that you're confident and comfortable, that you can do it within a certain amount of time, perhaps, that you have all of your, you know, documentation, your paperwork set, whether it's a packet or an outline, and that you want to have that accomplished within 45 days. Cool. And what's your motivation behind that?
Well, so that if the opportunity were to present itself, that I would have a greater chance of being successful and securing that buyer.
Awesome. So being ready is a huge motivating factor for you.
Yep.
Awesome. Next steps, and you kind of mentioned those things. So doing a practice with Janine, observing or shadowing somebody else who's doing a buyer consultation, creating your outline for that, developing whatever documentation you have to have, making sure you're comfortable with the buyer agency agreement, that you can explain that to somebody confidently.
Right.
So reviewing that. Cool. These are good steps. And what would be your reward?
I get to go on to another task and cross that off my list.
You got to do some little thing. It's got to be something fun. Whether you like get yourself a cute little like clipboard to take to your meetings, or you know, treat yourself to an awesome meal, or you, whatever it is, it doesn't have to be huge, but do something to celebrate.
Okay.
Cool. That's a good one. And that's a great example of building out one of the top 5s as a goal as well. Cool. Well, I'm going to try to end on time today. So you can kind of see, are you feeling like you're getting a better idea of how these goals should be set up? So sometimes the tasks of the goal feel like a goal, and sometimes they should be broken down into their own tasks. So rule of thumb is don't overcomplicate it. Make sure that whatever you're setting up as your main goal is one thing. And remember that it has to be specific. It has to be measurable. It's an action word. So it's not just to have something or to, you know, there's got to be like an activity tied to it, that it's risky or it feels uncomfortable, time sensitive. So there's a due date and maybe a when you do it, that it's exciting or compelling, and that it's relevant to you and where you are in your business, where you are in your life, what's happening this part of the year. You know, fall is not spring market, and we don't quite know what's going to happen. So how do you kind of build that out in a way that you can, you know, do your best to anticipate how the months are going to go the next 3 months, but also know that you can go back to it, revisit it, recommit, change it, scrap it, check back in on it once a week at least. Have those things visible to you. Make sure you know what your motivation is. That's what you're going to have to go back to when things get hard, and they will. So make sure you've got your motivations identified. There has to be a real, like, deep inside of you reason why you want to do this. Break down your next steps and go back, revisit. Maybe it's just one simple thing to start with for the first week. Then maybe you add on, maybe you break something down further as you get into it. You may discover that. And don't forget to have a reward. Be sure to celebrate more than just checking the box. So if you're having a hard time setting those goals up, or you're feeling like you've overcomplicated them, you feel like maybe your goal isn't worthy of being a goal, or whatever it may be, this is part of accountability. So you can text me to set up an accountability call. It's a 20-minute call. So the anticipation is that you're doing some of this work before we talk. But if you come to me with a goal, I can help you break that down into this framework or a framework that makes more sense to you.
Amanda?
Yeah.
Or can I ask a quick question regarding something that Laura said about the
Yeah.
WB36? There have been so many videos out there about filling out a lot of the other contracts, but I haven't seen one on the buyer agency.
That's a
Is
good
there one
point.
out there?
I don't know if there's a video. I know Kimmy's reviewed it before, but
So that should
there
be
might not be a video of it.
Okay, I'll look for Kimmy's.
Yeah, she may have only done that in person. It's worth looking at hers. And if there isn't one out there, that's something that we will talk to her about. I'll make a note to ask her if she's got one out there or not. She
Okay.
can add that to her list. Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, thanks.
You're
Can you-
welcome.
Can you talk about, you just mentioned this fall market, and how it's different from spring market, and
Mhm.
your opinion on this year, how those two are going to transition?
Well, I can't say for sure, right? This has been a
Right.
really weird year. What Charlie was showing us today with the numbers, if you followed along with that
Mhm.
traditionally we see a drop. So we usually see around 10,000 units of available homes in the Metro Milwaukee area during the spring. By the time we get to November, it's down to around 8,000. That's pretty traditional. That's pretty typical. Usually during an election year, especially, the fall drops out after, like, usually around August. In traditional years that are not COVID years and are not election years, September, October can be a little bit of a bump of activity, and then it dies off November, December. This year, spring activity seems to be going into the summer, which is better than we usually see. We've got some ground to make up. So usually by July 4th, everybody's on vacation and things settle down a little bit. This year, we may continue to see more activity because we didn't really have spring for a month or so.
You get
But I can't say for sure.
You get different kinds of buyers in fall. Like I know in spring and early summer, they try to get families situated, before the kids have to attend school. So are the fall customers different that way?
It depends. It depends on their situation. What I notice more than anything is that investors are who pop up in the fourth quarter. They've got money they need to move around. They sold something earlier in the year. They need to buy something so that they don't have to pay capital gains taxes. They're trying to fill or deplete their portfolio before the year ends. They're trying to snatch up something they can flip for spring over the winter. So I more so see investor activity in the fourth quarter.
Interesting.
Third quarter is kind of a mixed bag. So that's another reason it's good to be able to revisit your goals, because you may find that by mid-quarter, what you thought was accomplishable is not, or you set your goal too low and things ended up going really strong and you need to adjust it, especially when it comes to production goals. So like number of happy clients closed, that can really shift with all the things that are going on, especially right now. So it's good to revisit those weekly for that reason. You can start to see a trend. Oh, last week I didn't hit my number and this week I didn't hit my number. Is it something I'm doing or is it the market?
Good thoughts.
Cool. Any other questions? All right. Well, hopefully this gave you a good framework to work off of. It is challenging, can seem boring or self-indulgent to take the time to really break down your goals in this way, but it is well worth it because then you can go back to them later and they feel very solid. So if you kind of feel like your goals are like, well, it's this and then it's this and also this and I want to do that, and well, I don't really have it on paper and I don't really have a way to tell if I accomplished it or not because I also want to do this thing. Try to focus that and simplify it, and taking the time to write them down is a really good way to do that. Thinking time and processing time and establishing time is super valuable in your business. It feels silly. It feels like you're not doing. It doesn't directly relate to clients, but setting yourself up for success in this way will tremendously change how your business happens. I can tell you from experience, the reason I sell so many houses is because I set these goals, I break them down, I check in on them regularly, I adjust as needed. I remember the one thing, if nothing else, the task that gets me towards that goal, that gets me momentum, that gets me a step closer. If I didn't have those things in place, I would just be kind of running around doing all these things, but I wouldn't be getting to those goals. So it's very worth taking the time to do this. If you want more detail on how this outline works, if you want to talk through setting up your goals, reach out to me. And you know, if you can get these set up this week, then you can start week 1 of the 12-week quarter starting next week. And then you're gonna have an awesome quarter. Sound good?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, thank you all for coming. Thank you for participating and sharing. I know that's a little nerve-wracking, and we do appreciate you being open about that. And like I said, text me if you want to set up an accountability call. And I really look forward to seeing what your goals are. Feel free to send them to me. And I'm going to check back and see how they're going later in the quarter.
Cool.
All right. Have an awesome day,
Amanda.
everybody. You're
You
welcome.
too.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Happy birthday.
Thank
Oh,
you.
yeah. Yeah, happy birthday.
Thank you.